The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their curved seats, all of them staring at High Ambassador as he stood at the crystalline podium. His violet skin had turned almost black, which happened when his species felt extreme fear or anger. Right now, he felt both. "The Dominion has crossed into the neutral rim," he announced. His voice was steady, but everyone could see his four-fingered hands shaking slightly. "They have destroyed 3 colony worlds in the past week alone. Their fleet is advancing toward the inner systems, and nothing we have done has slowed them down." The translator devices carried his words to every corner of the massive room. Some representatives gasped. Others closed their eyes in despair. A few simply sat frozen, unable to process what they were hearing. Counselor L, an elderly female of the species, clicked her mandibles together nervously. This was how her kind showed anxiety. "How many ships do they bring, Ambassador? We need to know what we are facing." Took a deep breath. "Our scouts report at least 12,000 warships, perhaps more. They do not make it easy to count their forces. They destroy any ship that gets too close." 12,000 warships. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone in the chamber understood what it meant. They were not coming for a small raid or a border dispute. They were coming for everything. Ambassador, who represented the aquatic Delphini species, rose from his water-filled seat. His blue scales glistened under the chamber lights. "We must combine our forces," he said urgently. "If every member species contributes their military vessels, we might have a chance to slow their advance. We could give our civilians time to evacuate." "Slow them," laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. It was the laugh of someone who had given up hope. "Ambassador, our combined military strength amounts to perhaps 4,000 vessels. They outnumber us 3-1, and their ships are far more powerful than ours. We would not slow them. We would simply give them more fuel for their engines." They were unlike any enemy the galaxy had faced before. Their ships were not built from metal and circuits like normal vessels. They were grown. Living creatures of flesh and machine combined together, capable of healing their wounds and adapting to new threats. For 200 years, they had swept across the galaxy, consuming civilization after civilization. 17 species had tried to resist them. All 17 had been destroyed or enslaved. In the far corner of the chamber, a young aide to the delegation leaned close to his superior. He was barely old enough to serve in such an important position, but his family had connections. "Ambassador," he whispered, "what about the humans?" The room went cold. It was as if someone had opened an airlock to the vacuum of space. Every representative turned to look at. Their expressions showed a strange mixture of terror and desperate hope. The mere mention of humanity had that effect on people these days. "No," said firmly. His voice left no room for argument. "Absolutely not. We will not involve the humans in this matter." The young aide pressed forward, not understanding the danger of his suggestion. "But sir, they defeated the Empire by themselves. They had 10,000 ships and controlled 100 worlds, and the humans broke them in less than 2 years. They pushed back the crystalline swarm when everyone said it was impossible. If anyone can stop surely it is them." "And they did so with methods that still give me nightmares," replied sharply. "The humans are not a weapon to be pointed at problems, young one. They are a force of nature. Once they start fighting, they do not stop. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They continue until their enemy is completely destroyed." Counselor L spoke carefully, choosing her words with the precision of someone who had survived many political battles. "Perhaps we do not need to ask for their help. Perhaps we should simply send an envoy to inform them of the situation. Earth lies in the path of the advance. They have a right to know what is coming." "And what do you think they will do when they learn about it?" demanded. "Do you think they will hide? Do you think they will run? Have you learned nothing from their history?" The chamber erupted into frantic debate. Representatives shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Some demanded that humanity be contacted immediately. Others begged their colleagues to keep Earth out of the situation. A few suggested surrender to thee as the only way to survive. Through it all stood silently at his podium. He had studied humanity extensively. He had read the reports from the war, had seen the footage of what human soldiers did when they were angry. He had nightmares about it sometimes. The humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the or the most advanced, but they had something that no other species possessed in such abundance. They had an absolute refusal to accept defeat. When humans fought, they fought with everything they had. They sacrificed anything, risked everything, and endured suffering that would break other species. And they never, ever stopped. This made them the most terrifying species in the known galaxy. Far away, on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, a woman named Lucy Harper was working late in her office. She served as a senior analyst for the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, a government agency that most Earth citizens did not even know existed. Her secure terminal made a soft chiming sound. A message was coming in through the encrypted channels that connected Earth to the wider galaxy. Lucy read the message twice. Then she read it a third time, just to make sure she understood it correctly. The Galactic Council was sending a delegation to Earth. They were coming in person, which almost never happened, and according to the preliminary communications, they were scared, very scared. Lucy reached for her phone and pressed the button that connected her directly to her supervisor. "Director," she said when he answered, "I think you need to come to the office. We have visitors incoming, Galactic Council representatives, multiple species. And sir, they sound absolutely terrified." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "How soon?" "They will be here within the week." Another pause. "I will be there in an hour. Start preparing the welcome protocols. And Lucy, whatever this is about, I have a feeling our lives are about to get very complicated." Lucy hung up the phone and looked out her window at the Denver skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Somewhere out there, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the solar system, an enemy was coming, and the entire galaxy was afraid. But Lucy was not afraid. She had read the history books. She knew what humanity was capable of. The should-be, the ones who were afraid. The diplomatic shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with extreme caution. Every weapon system on the ship had been powered down. Every running light was set to maximum brightness. The pilots were broadcasting peaceful intentions on every frequency they could reach. Ambassador had insisted on these precautions. He knew the stories about what happened to ships that approached Earth without proper clearance. The humans had orbital defense platforms that could vaporize a cruiser in seconds. They had fighter craft that were faster than anything else in the galaxy. And they had a policy of shooting first and asking questions later when it came to unidentified vessels. The shuttle landed at a designated facility in the Nevada desert. The location had been chosen by the humans and suspected it was far from any major population center on purpose. If something went wrong, the damage would be limited. A small human delegation was waiting on the landing pad. Counted only 5 people. 5 humans to meet an ambassador of the Galactic Council. Such confidence bordered on arrogance. Or perhaps they simply knew they had nothing to fear from him. A tall man with graying hair stepped forward as descended from the shuttle. The man was wearing a simple dark suit, nothing fancy or ceremonial. His face was calm and friendly, showing no sign of concern or anxiety. "Ambassador," the man said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I am Daniel, Director of Extraterrestrial Affairs. Welcome to Earth. I hope your journey was comfortable." Took the offered hand and shook it carefully. He had learned about this human custom during his preparations for the trip. "Thank you for receiving us on such short notice, Director. I wish the circumstances of my visit were better. Why don't you come inside and tell us about it? Gestured toward a low building at the edge of the landing pad. We have prepared a meeting room. Nothing fancy, but it should be comfortable enough. The meeting room was indeed simple by galactic standards. Plain walls, a rectangular table, comfortable chairs. No artwork, no decorations, nothing to indicate that this was the place where the fate of civilizations might be decided. Found himself seated across from a woman named Lucy Harper and 3 military officers whose names he immediately forgot. His attention was focused entirely on controlling his fear. Being this close to humans made his skin crawl. He kept reminding himself that they were allies, not enemies. The Dominion is invading the neutral rim, explained, getting straight to the point. Their fleet numbers over 12,000 vessels, possibly more. They have already destroyed several colony worlds and are advancing steadily toward the inner council territories. Listened without interrupting. His expression remained calm and thoughtful. At their current rate of advance, continued, they will reach the outer council worlds within 6 standard months. They will reach Earth in approximately 14 months. That is concerning, said mildly. I appreciate you coming all this way to warn us. Director, I must be very clear about something. Leaned forward, trying to convey the importance of his words. The Galactic Council is not asking for your assistance in this matter. Lucy Harper raised an eyebrow. She was younger than, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. You flew halfway across the galaxy to tell us about a massive threat and then ask us not to do anything about it. That seems like an unusual diplomatic approach. We are asking you to evacuate, said. Earth's population is relatively small by galactic standards. The Council would be willing to provide transport vessels and settlement rights on protected worlds far from the conflict zone. You could relocate your entire species to safety. The humans exchanged glances with each other, could not read their expressions. Human faces were difficult for him to interpret. Let me make sure I understand what you are proposing, said carefully. You want 8 billion people to pack up and leave our home planet because an enemy fleet might arrive in a little over a year. That cannot be stopped, insisted. His voice was rising despite his efforts to stay calm. They have never been stopped. Every species that has tried to resist them has been exterminated or enslaved. There are no exceptions. The Council believes that if humanity remains uninvolved in this conflict, they might be satisfied with conquering the inner territories. They might leave Earth alone. And if they decide not to leave us alone, then you will have had time to prepare a proper evacuation while they are occupied with us. Spread his hands in a gesture of pleading. We are trying to save your species, Director. We are trying to give you a chance to survive. Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the Nevada desert stretched toward distant mountains. The landscape was harsh and empty, but somehow beautiful. He was quiet for a long moment and wondered what he was thinking. Ambassador, finally said, do you know why the Empire attacked Earth 15 years ago? Shifted uncomfortably in his seat. There were various theories: resource acquisition, territorial expansion, simple aggression. They attacked us because they believed we were weak, turned back to face the ambassador. They looked at our population numbers, our limited space fleet, our lack of experience with galactic warfare, and they saw easy prey. They thought they could crush us quickly and add our world to their empire. They were wrong, Lucy Harper added quietly. They were very wrong, agreed. The war lasted 18 months. At the end of it, the Empire no longer existed, not because we are stronger or more advanced than they were, but because we refused to give up. We refused to surrender. We refused to accept that defeat was possible. Felt his heart sink. He had 2 of them and both were beating rapidly with anxiety. Director, they are far more dangerous. Their ships can heal themselves. Their fleet can adapt to any tactic. They have destroyed 17 civilizations. Every enemy is dangerous until they are not. Returned to his seat at the table. We will take your warning under advisement, Ambassador. We will prepare our defenses and study them carefully. But I can tell you right now, with complete certainty, that humanity is not going anywhere. We will not abandon our home, Lucy Harper added, and we will not abandon our allies. Sat in silence for a moment, processing what he had heard. He had expected this response. He had hoped for something different, but he had expected exactly this. I was afraid you would say that, he finally said. I was very afraid you would say exactly that. Why does our decision frighten you so much? Asked. Surely it is better to have allies who will fight beside you than allies who run away. Looked at the human directly. Because I have seen what happens when humanity goes to war. I have read the reports. I have watched the recordings. And I know that once you start fighting, you will not stop until either you or your enemy has been completely destroyed. They are terrible, Director, but in their own way so are you. The room was silent. The humans did not argue with him. They did not try to defend themselves or explain their methods. They simply sat there, calm and confident, waiting for the storm to come, and knew with absolute certainty that the galaxy was about to witness something terrible, something magnificent, something that would change everything. May the stars have mercy on everyone caught in between. News of the advance spread quickly through human space. Within days, everyone knew that an enemy was coming. Within weeks, the response had begun, and the response exceeded anything the Galactic Council had anticipated or feared. On Mars, the colonial shipyards abandoned all civilian projects. Cargo vessels that had been under construction were torn apart so their materials could be used for warships. Exploration craft were retrofitted with weapon systems that made Council observers turn pale with shock. The human engineers worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts, pushing themselves to the edge of exhaustion and beyond. We need more ships, the yard commander kept saying. We need them faster, push harder. And his workers pushed harder. They always did. On Luna, Earth's moon, a woman named Battl Collins stood in the command center of the Orbital Defense Network. She was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had commanded the lunar garrison during the war, and her reputation among alien intelligence services was legendary. Some called her the Iron Lady. Others called her the Butcher of, after the battle where she had destroyed an entire enemy fleet by luring them into a trap. She did not care what they called her. She only cared about protecting Earth. What is our current status? She asked her aide, a young man named Davis who had served under her for 3 years. The defense platforms are coming back online, Admiral. Most of them have been dormant since the war. It is taking time to get them operational again. How much time? Another 2 months at minimum. Collins frowned. 2 months was too long. They were not going to wait for her convenience. Push the engineering teams. I want those platforms ready in 6 weeks. Yes, Admiral, I will make it happen. She turned to study the holographic display that filled the center of the room. It showed the galaxy's spiral arms in glowing blue light, with the advance marked in angry red. The red stain was spreading like blood across fabric, consuming system after system as it moved. Current fleet strength, she asked. 800 combat-capable vessels. Another 300 in various stages of construction at the shipyards. It is not enough. No, Admiral, it is not. Collins stared at the display for a long moment. 800 ships against 12,000. The numbers were hopeless. Any rational commander would look at those odds and start planning an evacuation. Battl Collins was not a rational commander. She was a human commander, and humans did not believe in hopeless situations. Then we will have to be creative, she said quietly. Across Earth, similar conversations were happening in every military facility, every research laboratory, every government office. The threat was clear. The odds were terrible, and humanity was responding the only way it knew how. In a secret laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, a team of scientists was working on something they called Project Silence. It was a weapon designed specifically to fight based on intelligence gathered from decades of observation. The lead scientist was a man named Price, a combat engineer who had served during the war. He had seen what enemy weapons could do to human bodies. He had held dying friends in his arms, and he had sworn that he would never let it happen again. "The ships are networked," he explained to Lucy Harper, who had come to inspect the project's progress. "They share information constantly. They coordinate their attacks through a kind of neural link that connects every vessel in their fleet." "Like a hive mind," Lucy said. "Similar, but not exactly. Each ship still has individual crew members who make decisions, but those decisions are informed by data from every other ship in the network. It is what makes them so effective. They learn from every engagement. They adapt to every tactic." Lucy studied the technical readouts on screens, and if we disrupted that network, then they would be reduced to individual ships fighting individual battles, still dangerous but manageable. They would lose their biggest advantage. "Can it be done?" Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had found a weakness in an enemy that everyone else considered invincible. "We have identified the frequency bands they use for their neural network. It is actually similar to technology we developed during the Crystalline Swarm campaign. We can build jammers that will isolate individual ships from the collective." "How many jammers would we need?" "About 100 to cover a major engagement. The problem is range. Each jammer has to be deployed within close proximity to enemy vessels. We are talking about kilometers, not light seconds. Which means we need delivery systems that can penetrate their formation." "Exactly." Pulled up another screen showing technical designs for small, fast spacecraft. "I have some ideas about that. Drone ships, suicide craft. They do not need to survive. They just need to get close enough to activate the jammers." Lucy nodded slowly. "How long until you are ready for production?" "Give me 3 months." "You have to." Did not argue. He simply nodded and turned back to his work. There was no time for argument. There was no time for anything except preparation. The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing anxiety. Their spy network sent constant reports about human military activity, new ships being built, new weapons being developed, training exercises that pushed personnel to their limits. "They are actually going to fight," Counselor L observed during an emergency session of the Council. "Despite everything we told them, despite all our warnings, they are preparing for war." "Did you expect anything different?" Ambassador replied. "We have studied human history extensively. They have never retreated from a fight they believed was necessary. They have never abandoned allies. They have never surrendered to an enemy, no matter how powerful. But the will destroy them. The numbers are impossible. Perhaps, or perhaps the humans know something we do not." High Ambassador stood at the chamber's viewing window, staring out at the stars. His mind was troubled by memories and fears that he could not shake. "I have read the reports from their previous wars," he said quietly. "The tactics they employed, the weapons they created, the sheer relentlessness of their resistance. They had every advantage and the humans still broke them." "They were overconfident fools," Al said dismissively. "Yes, they were," turned to face his colleagues. "And they are not overconfident, they are careful, they are methodical, they study their enemies and plan their attacks with precision." "Then the humans have no chance." "That is what everyone said about the war. That is what everyone said about the crystalline swarm." Shook his head slowly. "I have stopped trying to predict what humans can and cannot accomplish. They seem to take predictions of their defeat as personal challenges." The council chamber fell silent. No one knew what to say. They were caught between two terrible possibilities. If the humans lost, that would continue their conquest unchallenged. If the humans won, the galaxy would be reminded once again why they feared humanity more than any other species in existence. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. On Earth, Bate Collins received a message from Price's laboratory. Project Silence was ahead of schedule. The first prototypes would be ready for testing within 6 weeks. She read the message and allowed herself a small smile. The thought they were facing a weak and primitive species. They thought their numbers and their technology would guarantee victory. They were about to learn the same lesson that every enemy of humanity eventually learned. Numbers could be overcome, technology could be countered, but determination, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat were weapons that no enemy had ever found an answer for. The war was coming, and humanity was ready to teach the galaxy another lesson in survival. 3 months before they were expected to reach Council space, something unprecedented happened. Every member species of the Galactic Council sent representatives to Earth. Not messages, not communications, actual living beings traveling across hundreds of light years to deliver their words in person. High Ambassador led the delegation. He had argued against this mission, had warned that it would accomplish nothing, but the Council had overruled him. They were desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. The delegation was received at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. The General Assembly Hall had been prepared for the occasion, with special seating arrangements to accommodate species that breathed different atmospheres or required unusual temperatures. It was the largest gathering of alien representatives ever to occur on Earth. Stood before the assembled human leaders. Thousands of faces looked back at him from the curved rows of seats. Cameras broadcast his image to billions more watching from their homes. The entire planet was paying attention. Distinguished representatives of humanity, he began, his translator device working hard to convey not just his words but the emotion behind them. I come before you today not as a diplomat seeking advantage. I come as a supplicant, a beggar. I come to plead with you on behalf of every species in the Galactic Council to remain uninvolved in the coming conflict with the... The assembly hall was completely silent. Even the usual background noise of shuffling papers and quiet conversations had stopped. We have seen what happens when humanity goes to war, continued. The Empire learned this lesson at terrible cost. Their civilization had endured for 12,000 years. They had conquered 200 worlds and enslaved a dozen species. They were one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the audience. The humans broke them in 18 months, not defeated, not pushed back, broke, completely and utterly destroyed. The Empire no longer exists because humanity decided that it should not exist. A murmur passed through the assembly. Some humans shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others sat, their expressions showing something that might have been pride. You did not simply defend yourselves, said. You did not simply protect your territory. You pursued the across 300 light years of space. You found there which they had kept secret for, and you destroyed it. You were so thorough, so relentless, that their species may never recover. The survivors are scattered refugees, hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy, afraid to reveal themselves. He took a deep breath before continuing. The crystalline swarm was a force of nature, a thing of mindless hunger that consumed entire star systems. Every species that encountered it was destroyed. Every fleet that fought it was overwhelmed. For centuries, the swarm was considered unstoppable, a force of inevitable destruction. Your scientists found their weakness in 6 weeks. Your military exploited that weakness with such efficiency, such merciless precision that the swarm no longer exists, not reduced, not contained, eliminated entirely from the galaxy. His voice cracked slightly. He was revealing fears that his species rarely admitted, even to themselves. Do you understand what this means to us? We have watched you fight and we are terrified, not of you. Secretary General leaned forward at her podium. She was a small woman with silver hair and kind eyes, but her voice carried the authority of someone who spoke for all of humanity. Ambassador, are you telling us that the Galactic Council fears humanity more than it fears the enemy currently invading your territory? Yes, the word hung in the air like a thunderclap. They are predictable, they conquer, they enslave, they move on. This is terrible, but it is comprehensible. We understand their motivations and their methods. He stepped closer to the human delegation. Humanity is not predictable. When you fight, you do so with methods that defy everything we understand about warfare. You weaponize everything. During the war, you turned asteroids into projectiles. You converted merchant ships into explosive decoys. You enemy communications to spread confusion and chaos. You attacked supply lines, manufacturing facilities, leadership structures. You fought like you were willing to sacrifice anything, destroy anything, endure any suffering just to achieve victory. We call that determination, Secretary General said calmly. We call it madness. Immediately raised his hands in apology. I do not mean that as an insult. I mean it as a statement of fact. Your species seems to have no concept of acceptable losses, no point at which you decide the cost of victory is too high. You simply continue until you win or until there is nothing left of you. And you fear that if we fight we will bring that same approach to this war. I fear that if you fight the resulting conflict will destroy everything caught in between, your space, our space, the neutral territories, everything. His voice was pleading now. They are powerful, but they are not unreasonable. They want territory and resources. If they are allowed to conquer the inner council worlds without opposition, they may be satisfied. They may stop. And if they do not stop, then at least the devastation will be limited. At least some civilizations will survive. Secretary General was quiet for a long moment. The entire assembly waited for her response. Ambassador, she finally said, you are asking humanity to abandon our allies. You are asking us to ignore a direct threat to our home. You are asking us to trust that an enemy who has never shown mercy will somehow spare us if we remain quiet. Yes, I am asking all of those things. And in return, you offer us the hope that maybe, possibly, they will decide they have conquered enough. That maybe they will not come for Earth after they have finished with everyone else. It is a small hope, admitted, but it is better than the alternative. No, his voice was gentle but firm. No, Ambassador, it is not better than the alternative. The alternative is that we fight, that we stand beside our allies, that we face this enemy together with everything we have. You will all die, said desperately. Perhaps, but we will die on our feet, not on our knees. We will die fighting, not hiding. And if we are going to die anyway, we would rather take the with us. The assembly hall erupted in applause. Humans rose from their seats, cheering and clapping. The sound was deafening, overwhelming. Stood alone at the podium, surrounded by the noise of a species that had just chosen war. Then may whatever gods you believe in have mercy on us all, he said quietly, but no one heard him over the cheering. After the assembly, Admiral Bate Collins met with her senior staff at a secure facility outside the city. The council is scared of us, she observed, more scared of us than of the. Can you blame them? Price replied. He had arrived from his laboratory to brief the Admiral on Project Silence. We do have a certain reputation. One we earned. Collins pulled up a strategic display showing the current military situation. How are the preparations? Fleet strength is at 1,100 vessels. The Mars shipyards are producing new ships faster than anyone thought possible. We should have 1,400 by the time the reach Council space. Still outnumbered almost 10 to 1. Yes, Admiral, but we will have the jammers, and we will have surprise on our side. Collins studied the display carefully. The fleet was still advancing, still consuming everything in its path. Soon it would reach the first major council worlds. Soon the killing would begin in earnest. "The council does not want our help," she said. "The council is afraid of what our help might cost them." "And they are right to be afraid." Collins turned to face her staff. "When this war begins, it will not end until one side is completely destroyed. They do not surrender, and neither do we." "Is that what we want?" one of the officers asked. "Total war, complete destruction?" Collins considered the question carefully before answering. "What we want does not matter. What matters is what is necessary. They will not stop because we ask nicely. They will not negotiate. They will not compromise. The only language they understand is force." She turned back to the display, her eyes cold and determined. "So we will speak their language, and we will make sure they hear us very, very clearly." The fleet entered Council space exactly on schedule. Their ships emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of locusts, thousands of vessels spreading across the void. They swept through the outer territories with terrible efficiency. 3 more colony worlds fell in the first week alone. Millions of beings were killed or captured. The Council's combined fleet assembled for what everyone assumed would be a final stand. 4,000 ships from 47 different species gathered together in a desperate attempt to slow the enemy advance. They knew they could not win. They hoped only to buy time for civilian evacuations. High Ambassador watched from the bridge of his flagship as they emerged from hyperspace. The enemy fleet filled his sensors like a cloud of death. 12,000 warships, maybe more, all moving with the perfect coordination that made them so deadly. "This is it," he said quietly to his aide. "This is where our civilization ends." "At least we will die fighting," the aide replied. He was young and still believed in such things. Did not answer. He was watching his sensors, waiting for the end to begin. Then something unexpected happened. A new signature appeared on his displays, then another, then dozens more. Ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel directly behind the formation. Human ships, 1,400 of them, arranged in perfect battle formation. "No," whispered. His violet skin turned almost white with shock. "No, no, no, what are they doing?" The human fleet did not hesitate. They did not attempt communication with They did not send warnings or demands. They simply attacked. Admiral Bate Collins commanded from the bridge of the carrier Endurance, the largest warship in the human fleet. Her tactical display showed the entire battlefield in glowing light. Enemy vessels were marked in red, friendly ships in blue, and all around her, chaos was about to begin. "Deploy the jammers," she ordered calmly. 100 small craft launched from the human formation. They were suicide drones, each carrying one of Price's network disruption devices. They raced toward the fleet at maximum speed, dodging and weaving to avoid enemy fire. The point defense systems were excellent. They destroyed 70 of the drones before they could reach their targets, but 30 made it through. 30 was enough. The effect was immediate and devastating. The neural network that connected every vessel suddenly went dark. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination faltered and stumbled. Some collided with each other. Others broke formation entirely, their crews struggling to operate without the constant flow of information they had depended on for their entire lives. "All ships engage," Collins said. The human fleet tore into the confused formation like wolves among sheep. Weapons that had been developed specifically for this enemy carved through hulls. Tactics designed to exploit the disorientation worked exactly as planned. Human pilots flew with reckless aggression, pressing every advantage, giving the enemy no time to recover. Within 3 hours, 2,000 ships were destroyed or disabled. The remainder of their fleet attempted to regroup, but human vessels pursued them relentlessly. Every time they tried to restore their network, another wave of jammers disrupted it again. By the end of the first day, the fleet had lost half its strength. By the end of the first week, they were in full retreat. The Galactic Council watched these events with a mixture of relief and growing horror. They were being defeated. Their centuries of conquest were ending. This should have been cause for celebration across the galaxy. Instead, Counselor L spoke the words everyone was thinking. They are doing it again. The humans are not just defending. They are counterattacking. They are taking the war to the enemy. Just like they did with the ambassador agreed quietly. High Ambassador stared at the tactical displays in silence. Human ships were advancing deeper into territory every day. They were not stopping. They were not negotiating. They were pursuing a beaten enemy with the same relentless determination they had shown in every previous war. By the end of the first month, Admiral Collins led a pursuit force into the home system itself. 6 months after the initial engagement, Collins accepted the surrender aboard the Endurance. The meeting took place in a plain conference room. No ceremony, no celebration, just the practical business of ending a war. The enemy delegation consisted of 5 beings who had once commanded an empire. Their skin, normally a healthy shade of green, had turned gray with exhaustion and despair. Their neural network was destroyed. Their fleet was scattered. There was occupied by human forces. "Your terms," the lead asked through a translator device. "Complete disarmament," Collins replied. Her voice was cold and professional. "Release of all enslaved populations from every species you have conquered over the past 2 centuries. Full reparations to every civilization you have harmed. And you will never again build warships or attempt conquest of any kind." "And if we refuse these terms?" Collins smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "Then we continue until there is no one left to refuse." They signed the surrender documents within the hour. When Collins returned to Earth, she found Lucy Harper waiting for her at the landing field. The Nevada desert was hot and dry, but after months in space, Collins was grateful for fresh air and real sunlight. "The Council has sent a formal message of gratitude," Lucy reported as they walked toward the waiting transport. "They are very thankful for our assistance. They are also requesting that we reduce our military presence in their territory. They are scared of us. Absolutely terrified." Ambassador gave another speech to the Council. He said that humanity is the most dangerous species in the known galaxy. He recommended that every other civilization be very careful never to give us a reason to fight. Collins laughed softly. "He is not wrong." "No, he is not." Lucy was quiet for a moment. "The question is, what do we do about it? Our reputation, I mean. We are the monsters that other species use to frighten their children now." Collins considered this carefully before answering. "I think we accept it. We did not ask for these wars. They attacked us. The crystalline swarm threatened everyone. They were going to destroy our allies and eventually come for Earth. We responded to threats. That is all. With overwhelming force. With effective force, there is a difference." Collins stopped walking and turned to face Lucy directly. "The galaxy can fear us if it wants, but they can also trust us. We do not start wars, we end them. We do not attack the innocent, we protect them." Fear and trust, that is an unusual combination. "It is the only combination that works." Collins resumed walking toward the transport. "Fear keeps people careful. They think twice before threatening us or our friends. Trust keeps people safe. They know that if they are in trouble, we will help them. And if someone does not think carefully, if someone attacks us anyway." Collins smiled grimly. "Then they learned the same lesson they learned, the same lesson the crystalline swarm learned, the same lesson they just learned. Which is, never give humanity a reason to fight, because once we start, we do not stop until we have one." 10 years after the war, the Galactic Council established a new policy regarding Earth and human territory. It was called the Sol Exclusion Zone. The rules were simple. No species was permitted to conduct military operations within 500 light-years of Earth's sun without explicit human approval. The reasoning was also simple. Keep humanity happy and they will leave you alone. Make them angry and they will end your civilization. High Ambassador retired from diplomatic service shortly after the war ended. He spent his remaining years writing about his experiences with humanity. His memoirs became required reading at every diplomatic academy in the galaxy. One passage was quoted more than any other. It appeared in textbooks, in speeches, in warnings passed down through generations of young diplomats learning about the dangers of the galaxy. I have met many species in my long career. I have encountered predators and pacifists, conquerors and creators. None of them compare to humans. They are not the strongest species. They are not the most advanced. They are not the most numerous. But they possess something that no other species truly understands, an absolute refusal to accept defeat. When they fight with everything they have. They sacrifice anything. They risk everything. They endure suffering that would break other species. And they never stop. This makes them terrifying. It also makes them the best friends anyone could have in a dangerous galaxy. Just never become their enemy. On Earth, life continued much as it had before. People worked and loved and argued and created. Children grew up knowing that somewhere out there, among the stars, other species looked toward their small blue world with fear and respect. The wars had been fought far from home. Most humans regarded them as distant events, important but not personal. They went about their daily lives, secure in the knowledge that their planet was protected. But in the darkness between stars, humanity's reputation continued to grow. Stories were told around alien campfires and in alien nurseries. Warnings were passed down through generations. Somewhere in the galaxy, any species that considered aggression looked toward the unremarkable yellow star where humans lived, and they decided that conquest was not worth the risk. Earth remained at peace. The galaxy made very sure of that.